Hey guys, what's up? Excoundrel here, and today is the day we are finally looking at top picks for Vainglory 5v5. Yes, we're going to dive into the Vainglory 5v5 meta and find out which heroes are best on Sovereign's Rise. We've had enough time to work it out. We've looked at pro play, we've looked at the sort of casual play, we've found out what works for us and what doesn't work for us. It is now time to get on the road and start telling you guys about it. No surprises, no heart attacks given. No one in the world is going to sort of throw up their bet and say I didn't bet against this, because Vox is still meta. Interestingly enough, he's actually more a CP carry at the moment in 5v5 in the mid lane than he is a weapon power carry. But you can play weapon power in the side lane. I wouldn't recommend weapon power in the mid lane. I think it kind of takes away a spot that should be dedicated for a mage. But CP Vox in the mid lane works really well with the build that you can see above. If you want to play weapon power build path with the buff to Breaking Point and double turret's monocle is back. So feel free to give that a go, and adding in a poison shift for sustain is good too. Talked about mages in the mid lane. Celeste with her range buff, her wave clear, her great teamfight presence and a stun is also a really solid mid lane pick. You can see her build path there. A lot of people opting to go for Eve of Harvest first for the energy regen and the ability to sustain a little bit. And then you can go the Dragon's Eye or Shatterglass depending on how you want to play. We did a video on it. If you are very good at maintaining stacks on Dragon's Eye, which a lot of the pro players are, you'll see them go for the Dragon's Eye. But you can also go for a Shatterglass if you're not so confident in your ability to maintain stacks. VARYA is something that the North American pros have really been playing quite a lot of. She scales insanely well into the late game. Her CP build path is still very strong. She doesn't really get played as weapon power anymore, but you can still play her as a CP mage in the mid lane, and actually people max her A now instead of her B. And you play her a little bit like a semi-long range poker who can then go into the ability of having those basic attacks focused with alternating current. So VARYA definitely worth considering in the mid lane. And finally, actually, the laner that a lot of North American players are considering the best laner in the game right now is Samuel. He does everything well. He is a very good early game hero. He scales really well into the late game. He's got great lane sustain. He can clear waves. He's got splash damage for team fights with his Malice and Verdict. He's not too difficult to pull off. And he's a really good Dragon's Eye stack maintainer. So Samuel is definitely worth considering right now if you want to play into the mid lane. He's super strong, I think, pretty much dominates most aspects of the game. And I would say he's maybe one of the strongest heroes on 5v5 right now. Let's have a look at jungle heroes that's moving through. And honestly, no surprises to see KRUL here. The jungle is dominated right now by early impact junglers who really don't require that much gold to be good, because right now it's so easy for your laners to steal your jungle's farm that the jungle very rarely gets an opportunity to hyper farm. So hyper farming junglers are kind of out the window, and junglers are now all about the most efficiency with the smallest amount of gold and the ability to impact lanes and the game by creating pressure. And KRUL is one of those heroes. He doesn't need much gold to be good. Poison shift into Breaking Point is a pretty standard build for him. And he can really gank hard early, and also at level 6 has an extra facet in his kit. Speaking of early impact junglers, GLAIVE is one of those. Now, this is someone that I've been playing quite a lot of. I really love him. He's really impactful in ganks. You know, just from level 1, level 2, he can start to impact lanes with Afterburn. And you can see his build path doesn't require a huge amount of gold to be good. I like the Spell Sword, Poison Shiv, Breaking Point build personally, because I like to have the energy regen of the Spell Sword to make sure that I'm being more utility focused, which is what I think GLAIVE should be. Really, just having that cooldown reduction added into your kit makes him a really good ganker. You could consider CP GLAIVE again. I think there's potentially a space for him, but it hasn't really been tested too much yet. So the Spell Sword kind of alleviates the need for CP GLAIVE because it gives you the cooldown reduction in a weapon power build path. It wouldn't be the jungle without mentioning KOSHKA. She has been a nightmare for a lot of players. She doesn't quite fit into that utility-heavy jungler focus that I talked about, but she spikes really hard with just an Aftershock, and you don't need much gold to make that happen, and it allows you to snowball the game pretty significantly. So KOSHKA is definitely strong on 3.0. I think most people know that. She's a very, very good jungler at this point in time, so worth playing her if you want to. And finally, Alpha, something that the European pros especially are liking right now. CP build path tends to be more favoured than the weapon power build path because it takes less gold to be good. Again, Aftershock junglers generally are good with that Aftershock spike. I like her weapon power build path though. I like Spell Sword, Breaking Point, Poison Shiv as a build path because it's quite cheap and honestly can scale quite well into the late game with the buff to Breaking Point. You can see her build path can be kind of split up here, but the common build path for North America right now and Europe is Aftershock, Broken Myth into Eve of Harvest if you get a third CP item. A lot of people tend to stop after 2. Moving into side lane heroes, and this is going to be a big one because there are top and bot lanes, and there's not really a defined meta between those two lanes. So I'm just going to include 8 good side lane heroes, and we're going to start with Rhyme. Rhyme is an interesting hero because not a lot of people have been playing him, but I think he's definitely very good and worth picking up because he counters a lot of the other good side lane heroes right now, like RONA, for instance. So Rhyme is a sleeper pick that I think people will start to pick up more of as we go throughout the meta, and I definitely think he's worth considering as a counter pick for a lot of good other melee side laners right now. Just mentioned RONA, that is because RONA is just very good. She doesn't have that many bad matchups, Rhyme is only one of them, and she's a pretty safe side laner in general. She can engage on ranged carries from level 2, she's very good at lane bully, she sustains really heavily with her build path, and she's a very good teamfight presence too. So RONA definitely worth playing in a side lane. She goes from Serpent's Mask, Breaking Point, Sorrow Blade, and maybe a Bonesaw instead of the Sorrow Blade if you need to. And because of the Breaking Point buff, it's made RONA better. Inadvertently buffing Breaking Point has made Breaking Point reliant carries better, and RONA is a Breaking Point reliant carry. Talked a lot about broken heroes. Gwen just happens to be one of those right now. Gwen is in a super strong place right now because of her buff to her heroic perk and Tension Bow. So you go Tension Bow, Sorrow Blade, Breaking Point, Tyrant's Monocle. That is the build that a lot of Gwen players have been using. You hit like a truck in the late game, and she's just overall ridiculously strong. And she snowballs so heavily from the laning phase too. You can play her CP build path, but it is strictly inferior to her weapon power build path right now. But I did give you a build just in case you were curious. Side lanes house a lot of interesting strategies, and split pushing is one of them. JOULE is a very good split pusher right now because she just takes turrets with ridiculous ease, especially with this critical strike build path that you see here. Sorrow Blade into double Tyrant's Monocle into some sort of attack speed item. I like Tornado Trigger personally because I'm just there to crit the turrets and maybe crit 1v1. But if you think that you're going to function in a longer fight, Breaking Point might be worth it, and Bonesaw maybe because it helps you take turrets but also gets through a bit of armor if someone's built a lot of armor against you. Looking at the split pushing tactic that itself, no other carry than Saw can kind of do it as well. Saw is an interesting pick because he naturally draws pressure to his lane by just being in lane. He is a lane bully, not many people can deal with him, and he naturally draws pressure to his lane, which means junglers are going to gank him, captains are going to come up to the top to protect him and gank him, so he's just an interesting carry in that way. His weapon power build path has been up in the air. The most common that I tend to see is the Serpent's Mask into double Tyrant's Monocle, but with the buff to Breaking Point, you should maybe consider that, and Sorrow Blade could also be added in somewhere. A lot of North American pros are playing his CP build path, so you want to go back and have a look at that build and give it a go, please do. BLACKFEATHER has been making a rise in the side lane. He's very, very good at taking out squishy heroes. He's one of those guys that's going to scale up. He's kind of useless before level 6, but once he hits level 6, he's very good at diving in teamfights and taking out the likes of Celeste and Samuel. So BLACKFEATHER has definitely been seeing a little bit of a rise in the side lane. Weapon power build path is unchanged from what you would know. Tension Bow buff means that Tension Bow is a good third item again. And a lot of North American players have been playing this Aftershock CP BLACKFEATHER, which seems to be having a little bit of success. I mean, I got destroyed by one in the jungle the other day, so if you guys want to try out CP BLACKFEATHER with the Aftershock, it was something that East Asia coined quite a while ago. Make sure you give that a go. We're into the point of the side lane picks where Dowsey will be happy because it's IDRIS followed by Reza. Sorry, spoiler alert, the last one in the side lane is Reza. IDRIS, Spell Sword has given him some interesting changes to his weapon power build path, but largely unchanged, and I think the Sorrow Blade Poison Shift Breaking Point is still perfectly fine. His CP build path you can see above. Shatterglass allows you to hit his Divergent path straight away, and then in the last sort of item, the choice between Broken Myth and Dragon's Eye depends on how much shielding you're facing. And finally, Reza. Reza is, I personally feel, a better laner than a jungler. I think he needs 4 items to be good, and it's very hard to hit 4 items in this current jungle meta because you just don't get to farm as a jungler because your laners take your farm, or your enemy laners take your farm, and you're kind of left with just your gold toad, which is not good enough income to hit a 4-item build. Aftershock is definitely his first item, and then there's a bit of contention about what his second item should be. North America has gone back to Broken Myth. We've talked about Shatterglass versus Dragon's Eye. Kind of, I think, depends on your personal preference. But I like either Shatterglass or Dragon's Eye. Broken Myth maybe later on in the build if I need it. We're moving on to captain heroes now, and one of the captain heroes that I love playing at this point in time is Grace. She's got great protection, she's pretty good as a secondary ganker, she can roam really easily with her high movement speed, so I think Grace is super strong. You can play her weapon power jungle, by the way, and maybe weapon power lane. She's very, very good early game, and a build like that would be, I think, Tension Bow double Turret's Monocle or Sora Blade double Turret's Monocle, so definitely consider that if you want to have a bit of fun with Grace, but she's still a very good captain. When it comes to captain items, as you'll notice, I've kind of just almost listed all of them. That's because captain items right now, there is no set build path. It's kind of what you need and when you need it. And I'll talk about that as we go through these captains. Lance is, in my opinion, one of the best captains right now alongside ARDAN. Just personally because his ability to gank is super strong, and I think having a captain that can gank and impact lanes is really, really good in solo queue orientated 5v5 environments. So when it comes out in solo queue, I think Lance will be a really strong pick in the captain role. You notice that I'm including the Super Scout item here. I think that's actually a really good first item in a lot of captains, especially in solo queue, because vision is king. Having the ability to get deep vision down in the enemy jungle, or just maintain vision across the map, is super strong at keeping tabs on where your enemy is, setting up ganks, and understanding where your enemy are moving. So I love having that as my first item, because you don't necessarily need a fountain as a first item anymore. Team fights don't happen that often in the early game, unlike 3v3, so fountain isn't an absolute necessity. You can consider things like Echo, you can consider things like Crucible. ARDAN, no surprises there. Great mobility, great protection, super strong in terms of dueling as well, so ARDAN is just a great captain. And as FlashX has demonstrated on quite a number of occasions, Catherine is very good on 5v5 at this point. Just like I mentioned with the likes of Lance, she's a great ganking captain. She can walk into a lane and get a stun. She can lock people down. She's great at shutting down likes of Saw. She's great at shutting down the likes of Reza. She's very good at countering a lot of the popular side lane heroes right now too in teamfight situations. So Catherine just super strong. And there we have it. The Vainglory 5v5 first top heroes list from Excoundrel. I don't know why I referenced myself in the third person there, but hey, whatever, we're going to go with it. That was a list that took a while to collate. It took a lot of looking over pro VODs. It took a lot of staring down Dienzio's channel and FlashX's channel and seeing what everybody was playing there, comparing my own experiences in EU as well. There are some honourable mentions that we need to talk about. Batiste is very good as well. Lyra, she has got a place in 5v5, but that is a list to get us started, and when we come to 3.1 and when Ranked gets released, we'll be able to make a new one so you guys can start to climb the 5v5 solo queue ladder that much more easily. See you soon.